Hello, young legion. Train ye fall awake. So we have the World Trade Center attack coming up. So we have producers tricked, hurt, forced, persuaded, criminally foreign influence, delusions wrought, federal rules of evidences, racketeering, collusion roles already. As victims, but as victim predators. If you try to demonstrate how, as victims, making the wrong mistakes, there are styles of fact treatments, individually grouped and together, and sequentially. There are inclusion, preventing mandated law, having prevented mandated law, pretending other all the time, per how all the grounds have been used, and per where and how we are fact cheap in nature. And don't forget the sequence shifts. For example, there were students of a St. Anthony's school, like a Perron family and a Kerr family, that went out of their way through criminal foreign influences with courts and mayors, with the branches of government, and with private tied to them, with a method roles where from other, and there's a Joshua Julian recorded on Facebook involved with active and increasing child abuses that are also with recorded uses of elderly homes, different ones because it's uses of all the ground locations per one method that built itself through other methods, motivations, natures, needs, interests, as styles needing to keep what it causes, the breaching method, blamed on other things, others, and or on selves. Racism, for example, is recorded being and having been used by the interbranch and by the private tied to them and by the military involved with them, and their roles with the family members of principals, and their roles of the family members of teachers, not by accident, uses of it intercities. As victims, individually grouped together as victim predators, though. They're attaching and having been attaching everyone to fake words and fake locations into databases and speaking allusions tied to that, timed with the overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and with killers and people next to the body dumping spots, and the investigators all kept needing to hide the same sequence shifts, self-valued, finite, active, and progressive lies, identity thefts and frauds roles, and uses of those same locations. No one wanted people to kill. In other words, and no one wants to know about that, and then have to say about such things, speak about such things, and get hurt for it. See, they show people how they're going to hurt them if they say things or if they don't from the youngest grades, using a method where people are in the same grade, but they're not in the same class, so they're never going to see each other. And they make instances exceptions. The people who went into computers were all victims' roles with this. This is between, it is sickly distinctly present with public schools and with private schools and with homeschooling, but it is also sickly non-distinctly present. It is complete possession of the awareness and the uses of names between people of each age of fact-cheating nature. It's an identity theft / fraud method, where the slash is also part of the increasing identity of volumes that are one volume. Just like a cell is a cell, a nucleus cell, body cell, wall. Your wall. Together, body of value, individually, grouped, and species identity of volume, and then further distinctly, non-distinctly, and simultaneously as ground, yet gathered round. And the only reason it's self-valued forced from here, like space travel, going out of there, as self-valued lethal IDs because of how roles with the breaching method were self-valued. Victims who are engineered as predators only capable of blaming other things, others, and or selves for the real causes of negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures increasingly demonstrated to all locations. There is a chemical called PFAS, for example, and then how they separate chemicals. See, we were inherited upon a system that knew that it was that nature was going to demonstrate negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures, and demonstration of how the ground is tactically denatured since before cars. They sustained this against Native Americans to divide them against themselves. Now they had to use value nature systems, methods of farming, other than, in other words. And they say, well, where do you read this? Where's this research? Part of the research is where the people are making convictions using research. Part of the research is where and how, for example, they left out what our founders wanted us to demonstrate about how they didn't have free speech. They had to hide their actual roles by the phenomena that unfolded through the Constitutional Convention as it was actually wrought to being capable of being fathomed, which it wasn't capable of being fathomed. How could they defend the Constitution unabridged when people need to defend the identity of America, now forced to start a country? Our founders had to have the original roles with it. But now we have true founders that are other. But it's really a lie. So it's truth used as a lie. But it's the only truth on record, for example, with evidence. For example, with the reception of Marbury versus Madison, which I was taught by my father is, quote, real justice must satisfy all appearances of real justice, unquote. My father's accomplished pro se litigant. From outside of court, my father had no criminal record. He had a violation of park rules. So there are people pretending other with this Joshua Julian, with a child campus. But the same campus was involved with cliques that were involved with predicate acts on and off that child campus with the principal child abuser proven, but further recorded then and now with more names, and the roles of the police forms with the schools and with the programs. So you have a whole bunch of programs and people before involved with the sense and sensibilities of the people that are answering phones. So then they had including the principal child abuser. So they had to blame on other things, others, and ourselves. The real causes and the real dialogue when I called up the school, when it was brought up and the houses next to it. Wethersfield police recorded, confessed, and demonstrated, and their family members, with former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, and people associated with Patton Boggs in Washington, D.C. Please follow mandated law for them, because these are Connecticut, Hartford courts, judges, and prosecutors and family members that work for the place and next to their homes, which are next to schools, and involved with the leanest pizza and like a tiki bar on Park Street, through time involved with agencies and their family members, and with courts, also with overt criminal enterprises, plural, also with private ones, also with people involved with body dumping spots, with timed identity thefts, frauds, instances, roles with them, names forging and switching, at locations off courts and off police locations that have been themselves switching names and forging names. So New Britain courts and Hartford courts have roles with families and with Wethersfield police predicate acts with wire crimes over the last months. Like 6 months ago, there's an officer that used a male that used the name Sullivan. And then they said they only have a female Sullivan. But they confirmed that it was their officer that called from the Wethersfield town offices. Or from the, it was unclear, but the Wethersfield town offices are also the ones involved with this. So in the context of my father's death, leading up to it, in that context and sense, there were people on my street involved with the families, with the Wethersfield police. They answered the phones for them through time, that were involved with some untimely deaths. One of them reported on Trinity College. One of them, other ones through time involved with my area. And with the Robert Rodriguez that brought up the principal child abusers campus. And they hid all these. Not only did they hide, they replaced the medium. In other words, as part of the method of wire crimes. Only part of it, because these are people that have been involved with wire crimes since they were kids. I don't know the D. Simone. There was a Newington Police Department. There's a D. Simone that a guy named Brett. I don't know his name. They say these are people that since I was in grammar school, they know that people don't know the other's names, so they're not going to be able to respond correctly. And they make people get scared to react because they don't know how to react when people ask them about things the way they do it, where they have first someone make a fake instance that, with passions and emotions, like a kid from another classroom, like the daughter of a Mayor Gold, Debbie Gold. One time in the hallway, she came up with passions and emotions, pretending passions and emotions, with O'Brien family, brothers I also never had class with, were in other classrooms spreading lies as they were doing as roles with databases racketeering. But since before computers are like they are now with the schools, and these are the people involved with Joshua Julian, and with forensics locations. Houses that are involved with forensics locations are also personally recorded, confessed, demonstrated, and confirmed involved with Joshua Julian. I don't know him. He pretended with switching narratives, and he's involved with remote uses of the sense and sensibilities of coaches that they had lies to me. One of them, though, was involved criminally. There's a Casper family /S, IAS. I never had a class with a Chet Casper. He's one of the ones recorded, confessed, and demonstrated, confirmed by people in my 6th grade class. There were people involved with the intelligence community. And I never had a conversation in class. I never had a problem with him in class at all. Anything. I never sat around him, at lunch or anything. I never saw him. What was his name? Kevin Knisselis. And there's someone on his street, a man and women associated with Cromwell, all along Route 3. And there's a bar there that is involved with prosecutors and judges that have been, and people with courts that have been seeding not just allegations, but fake evidences at locations, and verbal fact treatments, wire crimes, mail crimes, uses of email. These are people also roles with ones I don't know, even the names of that I don't know, like the Joshua Julian. But they're also involved with the police and the courts, making fake Facebook pages pretending to be me and pretending to be my family members through time. These are also people that are involved with the investigators of Connecticut news media that are also recorded, confessed, and demonstrated, confirmed, involved with identity thefts and frauds instances relevant with how they played softball with each other through time, and with people recorded, confessed, and demonstrated involved with corners on Route 3 through time that are also further involved with the child abuses on and off campuses connected, and also relevant to where and how they have the police forms involved with identity thefts and frauds instances through time connected, as ones that are in the background using and having used people's names, where and how they use the quote, right to lie, unquote, originally still criminally foreign influence used remotely by a predicate acts delivery system method. I am not a lawyer. I don't have to be. We'll have the lawyers. We just need to have the acts dealt with honestly. So we have the interbranch in the background. They've been forging names and switching names since I was a kid. Confessed, recorded, demonstrated, confirmed, role stacking multiple falsified police reports into databases, and the one shown had no writing. They just had They just put charges. Then they switched officers' names, even the departments of the officers. So they have fake arresting officers' narratives on and off the interbranch locations, on and off the locations where there are problems between people. No. This is also relevant to how before this they sustained criminally foreign influence uses of and victim reactions to uses of the department's family members and cells on and off the campuses connected, especially in each science needs by to hide lie progressions, to keep the real causes of negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures that nature demonstrates the correlation / discorrelation relevant to where discorrelation was engineered, not miscorrelation. Miscorrelation is that self-value. Because of discorrelation, where the sabotage of correlation / discorrelation is being demonstrated. Also by the value of the / being our quality of diffusion. Where and how just because something's in other words, a criminal insidiousness nature as the identities of law, as identities speaking about the law when they answer what Jim Crow laws were about. They came through these sciences, criminally foreign influence tactically, by one method that was consciously building, effectively built methods as the motivations, natures, needs, interests, logic, styles, as arrays of opinions of people, types of people, in collusion against the short words and the revelations, with protraction proper. So we have offensively branched the government and foreign and overt criminal enterprise, private ones and killers, and people involved with the databases of all natures simultaneously, and then further into sciences. This is per a fact cheap in nature, how it unfolds where we receive it. That's why it's relevant to understand the styles of logic here. In denial, so these are also people with this game from when I was in the same grammar school. And these are also people recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, having been involved with instances where they made statements to me as strangers relevant to context that were addressed by the falsified police reports roles, by the identity thefts and frauds roles, by the uses of the identity ground locations roles. So the Wethersfield police have roles with some judges and prosecutors and their extended family members with a whole bunch of different countries, for example, all along Route 3 and all along where Church Street and Old Wethersfield with the corners, And that corner of the church, the spots at the corner of Church Street and Main Street in Old Weathersfield, a DeMorrow family and a Hanson family sought me out to confess, record, demonstrate, confirm roles with people from my grammar school, with a former Mayor Gold, and with Central Connecticut State University, with various people of various departments involved with them, with the intelligence community, criminally foreign influence, and with the World Trade Center. These are also people involved with racketeering, worse than war crimes, simple uses of Washington, D.C., for example, pretending they have the integrity to go against, and believing they have the integrity to go against an insurrection, where and how that is relevant to what I addressed with you at the beginning of this, where and how Marbury versus Madison, all appearances of real justice must satisfy, real justice must satisfy all appearances of real justice. See, they have that meaning be some fake suit and tie, theater. Because theater positive and negative treatments individually grouped and together, individually finite, grouped and together, species treatments. See, that volume science has increasingly prevented its short words. See, there is discorrelation by the Constitution unabridged that is hyper discernible by how Native American means and needs to afford an identity of the ground, identity of relationship to itself. That is positive, also positive unto itself. It is prevented, tortured out. All exceptions, exception nature, are in demonstration of the same thing, like everyone else. And see now, this is about what is simultaneously. So this is simultaneously. Look at the people of New York City, people stacked upon, vertically, horizontally, all the differences leveraged against them too. And self-value when they're debating it. Because this is a trap set up as a fact-cheaping nature-oriented trap. This is complete possession of the identity of the sciences shared through other motivations, natures, needs, interests. So when I speak about self-value, I'm not speaking to call names. This is about identity science. Value is positive, is relative to what is positive or negative simultaneously. That's what identity is. Relative to what is positive and negative, where more positive that is also positive unto itself is being made. But the words of that are through and as a value treatment, a value nature system /S that these words and value treatments can't defend themselves. For example, in other words, people who go to school to speak about finances and economics and the variables with that, they're told, okay, you could leave these exceptions out. Because our founders had to enter nations A through Z, counter-extorted, incapable of, not just incapable, that measured and maintained, incapable of defending the Constitution unabridged, needing to pretend other, that measured and maintained, needing to pretend they don't realize that measured, maintained effectively. This was sophistication here. This was sophistication there. Since before, that's why England doesn't remember the real history of English. This made nations hurt each other, individually grouped and together for itself. That hurt the species, knowing that it could force, trick, hurt, persuade the world into the phenomenon of self-valuing. the bridged sciences, abridged correlation nature, fact, cheap nature, quality, being and having been, obfuscated, not utilized, and worse, and the causes of it being and having been blamed on other things and or on others and or on selves. And then that was defended. And no one was watching the whole time. Everyone was defending tactically, criminally, foreign influence premises treatments, sequence treatments, finite, active, and progressive. What is the progressive value of who claims science built New York City? So they have the fake, then they would have made it worse, unsafe. Big building like that, you better have it safe. So they had to fight about that. Then there was a raise of difference, but this fake pseudo difference. Employed, hyper-employed. So we have to discern the difference between hyper-facts, hyper-truth, hyper-journalism. So the national news recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. Also their Facebook pages are involved with the employments with online policing. That is also involved with the blocking function, because those online policing have roles with overt criminal enterprises, private ones, killers, people next to the body dumping spots through time. All that didn't want roles, but it's how the locations are haven't been used. Is it corners of streets? So there are still people I don't know the names of, but we can only get them through the people I do know the names of. And we have to know, also there are courts that have been forging and saying fake things into databases with the people that have been speaking fabricated audio and video into databases, including judges, various natures of courts leading up to the World Trade Center attack in that context. And since, as collusion, they didn't want, but that's how they're used remotely. Their lie progressions are used. So to on-off Town Line Drive has a whole bunch of ties to people, for example, on-off Trinity College, on-off Central Connecticut State University, involved with judges, extended family members, and their roles with uses of little girls, where they make confessions to people, and then they're in the backgrounds because they're pretending with others that those people say they're trying to discredit the character of little boys and men, and offensively from the youngest ages. On and off campuses, they're making collusion between people that don't know each other, and they're using that to imply that they knew each other before they did, because everything shows that and how. That's part of it. In other words, there are the branches individually grouped and together have been hiding lie progressions onto all identity ground locations, but that's only part of it. And with overt criminal enterprises and private ones, that they were kept needing to hide the same finite sequence shifts and stuff like that. That's only part of it. And the killers, and the people next to it, like the spots next to it. It used to be a toddler house. Now it's like a Subway, and there's like a little, I don't know, there's places there. In West Hartford, near where the reported serial killer's body. That serial killer also recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, and being and having been involved with all kinds of medical racketeering with that corner, and with the stewards of him in his prison that were involved with that corner, with other fact, cheap nature predicate acts, illusions, no. And identity thefts and frauds instances, no. And delusions, no. With the various courts, too, tied to them. So Sandy Hook, Newtown, also has people further involved with child abuses and with elderly abuses and with criminally foreign influence uses of the systems and with criminally foreign influence uses of identities of relativity that has to where and how they're making treatments about sanctions regarding other nations' identities and where and how increasingly such is preventing here and there our country's locations, areas, and states from having citizens allowed to use correlation. Correlation simultaneously inherent, active, and progressive means, which are more finite than and greater than that while being that, but one way alone. Otherwise, what will only stay positive onto all parts of itself and a little bit more concentrated here as consciousness and as Earth's, as humanity's distinctly, non-distinctly, and simultaneously to discern it. But rather than discern that, everyone discerned the opinions, convictions, delusions that were also criminally foreign influenced, and that were also being and having been applied to instances that self-valued them from inside courts that make A or B treatments. In other words, the same way the news media with them, multi-front, outside courts, has been using time simultaneously too fast, simultaneously too slow, and sense and sensibilities to prevent what is actually capable of being discerned from being discerned. So, like that, in other words, and to prevent us from accessing the temporary locations for free, even better than not some little trap like when they look, every time they let's make temporary locations, someone will put up a bunch of trailers. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about temporary locations. If it has to be that, it has to be more than that to overcome. But it has to. We have to admit what is actually recorded, which is how the ground, the earth, its identity of value, progression, native, pure, no matter who you are. That system that is individual, grouped in species. Why we are bound that way. Why the cell, nucleus, cell body, cell wall. Why not to be, pretending evidence, making allegations against people. We have all kinds of physical delusions associated with psychiatry and psychology that are simultaneously criminally foreign influenced, that are simultaneously corrupt, that was simultaneously, for example, already exploited at locations through other motivations, natures, needs, interests. It's not just everyone in their own personal. It's individually grouped and together. They're making people of each age and nature. In other words, there's a Perón family, and there's a Tom Perón. I don't know the name of all the names of them, but they're involved with criminally foreign influence uses of investigations, and people involved with databases, Department of Motor Vehicles, Department of Transportation, interbranch, on and off campuses, on and off religious locations. They have the victims of child abuses at locations from off the locations, and on and off the locations where the victims are simultaneously, differentially, constantly each age there. In other words, the people caring for the kids and the kids. So they're blaming other things other than themselves, all that was involved with that through time. These are people involved. So they already painted themselves as their roles with cases and with fact treatments, including that put people in jails every day, including the people that house those jails, because they are kept themselves and their family members needed to hide the same sequence shifts, finite, active, progressive lies, uses of the lies they told to others when they were little kids, relevant to this increasingly connected between campuses and even homeschooled kids and their family members and their doctors, relevant also to uses of Britney Spears and reuses of words like privacy, where they are sequence shifting. And where they are preventing people from, so they use their own. This is how they use the kids of each age to hide the live aggressions. In other words, these are also exploitations of phenomena associated where we have job sites where originally still, so the country began economics as a criminal enterprise, forced that way by a hyper-archetypal criminal enterprise that came as sophistication since before modern nations, A through Z, that are many ways recorded effectively styles of sciences individually grouped in together. For example, and the branches individually grouped in together simultaneously. But worse was and is simultaneously with that. This was sophistication here, since before anyone was born. So these same names involve further with World Trade Center predicate acts. They have me in fake words about the World Trade Center with the journalists and with the people personally criminally involved with the courts that pretend that I had fake conversations with themselves and doctors associated with them. Personally, criminally, and with federal criminals since before they got caught through time, with people involved with remote uses of forensics locations, all kind of foreign and domestic medical racketeering and such juxtaposed, but it's worse. And there's remote uses of it. It's very simple to discern, but you have to follow mandated law. They need to pretend they don't understand people. So rather than allowing it to me to get a response for what I caught alone, no, I'm not, and they pretended I had conversations with it, about it with other people, including my family. And these are the people with the same school that attached me and my family to fake words through time at locations and interbranch, and where and how they prevent writing, so where they use such racketeering. Most people would never experience that, but it's recorded so you could experience it together. You just have to follow mandated law. They have the news media recorded, confessed, demonstrated. They like people to make themes, and because then they have people who are going to defend their roles with that and pretend they don't understand. That just the truth of them doing that. In other words, pretending, but we're going to do this for the victims of 9/11. They attach me and others to fake words with the news media, with the courts involved. For example, further with a proven post-dated documents had been presented to the Ninth Circuit Court next to the World Trade Center right before the World Trade Center attack. Post-dated from inside the court. That was proven. Someone from inside the court had post-dated what had been timely brought to New York and time-stamped on time into the Ninth Circuit Court right next to the World Trade Center towers, right leading up to that attack. And then they were presented to the panel of judges right before the attack, post-dated from inside the court. So they ruled it was filed late. That proven led to a 2006 case now in Connecticut. That was in Manhattan. Now it was in Connecticut. Leading up to that 2006 district court case in Connecticut, there were people from Hartford Superior Court and Hartford Probate Court and the Britain Superior Court and their family members and other courts, Middletown courts, and military, foreign and domestic, military police, one still involved with the forging names, switching names, wire crimes, with Wethersfield police, with such methods. Again, individually grouped in other words, the judicial branch also switches names, even with state's attorneys. So they've been involved with what is way worse than what they've been putting people in jail for and punishing them. They've been using what they've been trying to pretend. They've been recorded themselves, pretending to be about reforming people as their roles with locations. You need to hide life progression for where they grew up as roles with identity thefts and frauds instances, as roles with where and how the overt criminal enterprise is, plural, and the private ones. And worse, mixed with that, and everyone are kept needed to hide the same sequence shifts per those methods with the campuses recorded connected. So there are people from Middlesex Community College that recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. There's a before I went there, they sought me out to demonstrate, record, confess, confirm roles with the state police of Connecticut and Vermont, and foreign and domestic families, and people involved with predicate acts with federal criminals, child abusers, and things like that. Identity thefts and frauds instances, as also falsified police reports roles. And identity thefts and frauds instances roles relevant. On and off campuses connected. And confessions relevant. They're using confessions because then people can't go back, and it makes it look like you know people you don't know. Including where they mix in people you don't know at all. And where they're, and how the locations uses is one location uses. It's one, countries A through Z are the complete possession of one breaching method onto all locations. Don't forget that. And so this is what Little Rap Guy and friends are, a counter criminal enterprise, like our founding parents, to counter, but they're being forced to, like our founding parents that weren't the complete real ones. And know that's only possible because of the value that is given to, is and supposed to be more, but given to the Native Americans. See how a president is also a chief, but it can't be a chief, so it has to be a president. It can't be a chief because we're not going by the species in the volume. It's actually inherent, active, and progressive means. One way redeems, native pure. So, vaccines. So, I don't know the guy's name. I was going to bring up another thing. I was watching an episode on hotboxing. See, men don't know how to speak for integrity because they came through schools that they made them, and they were told to value criminal insidious natures of positive treatments, of negative treatments, and of identity thefts and frauds, instances, self-value, methodically, effectively. This is not hard to discern. That and how modern nations that are fighting with each other with words, and or when they call what they call peace. In other words, peace didn't design what they syntax to pretend is positive any identity of the ground location, identity of relationship to itself, the grounds. This is tactically denatured since before our founding parents were even born. That was sustained against Native Americans. That means their education memory of what is actually their history as our own, it was tactically, effectively prevented and replaced. So, we need the branches to step back from the branches and to see where and how they can. Because they've been doing way, way, way sicker than the innocent and even the guilty people they put in jails. That they send to community service, the other things. Those locations are still kept needing to hide the same sequence shifts Same finite active progressive lies, identity thefts and frauds roles. Instances with their family members before those instances. And they're not going to admit that. They're not going to connect all that. No one's going to say those things. See, this is a method where you have to follow mandated law and stop using names dropping. They use the names of celebrities and the names of the hosts, like Oprah. Of course, there's only one, or Gayle King, and then they use their where they're going to speak. They're going to want privacy for sequence shifts. In other words, same way they're using time all simultaneously, too fast and too slow in courts associated with the investigators associated with them, the journalists, and or even if they have badges. They know that they're worse than worthless. But they also must know, or could easily discern, that and how there were black, quote, black, unquote, countries involved with slavery and with uses of it that weren't just economic. Everyone leaves it out of their economic. Everyone leaves out. In other words, how you don't bring up what witch trials are about and what slavery was about, distinctly in the North and in the South, without looking at what that is simultaneously. See, then we would be looking at a predicate acts delivery system method. That is one thing slavery is, a predicate acts delivery system method. That is one thing it is true always, not denying exceptions, not valuing them being denied or having been denied. See, saying it was racism, that's not it. No one wants that sick. No one wants the sick, only capable of being fathomed. Uses of space and of means to fathom it any other way. Hear many pray, vaccines. There aren't even the worms in the suburbs. They're gone. The soils that we took away, we would throw it away. Oh, the nice lawn. No one's watching. No one's using the native system. So now the birds. Oh, well, let's investigate with the birds. Then we're going to defend their investigation. One of the reasons the birds are dying is because the soils every time it reached the rain, there used to be worms in the puddle. It's not just here. I don't have to eat. You can know that it's just not just here. The soil has nothing being put back into it. The leaves from the trees were supposed to fall onto the ground and make more soil. The grass is supposed to die, fall apart, make more soil, make more food for the worms, the beneficial bacteria and fungi. See, otherwise we have negative value nature progressions, acts and natures. So one identity of volume, of hypervolume, its identity of relationship to itself, and the value of that. Its hyper identity of relationship to itself. We could be other systems than its own. It demonstrates Leith of Hadid's force and space nature transfer. See, but now it is through this method that came through other motivations, natures, needs, interests. So everyone doesn't even discern that, having been the complete possession of your own opinions, convictions, when you contemplate or perceive rockets going into space, narratives regarding sciences and passions and emotions regarding space / existence. It is an increasing identity of volume where it is value as nature / nature as value. Boxings, pantheism. We're going to call this hyper-pantheism. And we're going to resurrect it because it's science. It's not faith. Faith is if you say, if you see, we're going to use this. We're going to code this. Because pantheism comes with games. Because evolution science only feels like games. Evolution science uses sense and sensibilities distinctly from a predicate acts delivery system method. Again, self-value rolls with it, originally and still, blaming other things, others, and ourselves for what really hurt Native Americans sustained A through Z, and colonists A through Z sustained before the American Revolution. Again, only a fake integrity of Constitution at surface, a theater breaching screening how all locations, areas, and states were still involved with and as what you can't be involved with and as, and defend the Constitution unabridged. But they needed to pretend other. And so our founders left us. They had the means to correlate this. But they discern this as being sophistication, and as having been sophistication since before countries A through Z, modern ones. So they were, and it's not by accident, Native Americans had to respond to so many negative value nature because they didn't have time to have to consolidate and say the white man. Because, in other words, where they had to argue with people individually grouped in together. And the people that had to argue with had to argue, in other words, everyone was a slave of one predicate acts delivery system method. And that was unceasing. It was effective. It was effectively not even discerned. How everyone was remotely blaming other things, others themselves, how for it was causing, that was being engineered, self-defended. That was simultaneously, no one was fathoming how premises treatments could be criminally fraud influenced. How could they, in other words, it is recorded consciously that people pretending to care for the victims of tragedies like Sandy Hook and the World Trade Center attack are names further involved with the names over here involved increasingly, inherently, actively, and progressively with campuses in my city. And I still didn't get a response from the principal child abusers campus and the confessions and NBC Connecticut News and other news replaced those confessions over the phone and onto an answer machine on the phone with fake communications over emails. These are also people that have roles with names on off my street with predicate acts as names with timed roles with predicate acts on off Trinity College and on off CCSU, leading up to the World Trade Center attack and leading up to a Connecticut District Court case with the same ones criminally involved with them at locations, remote uses of deans and of their family members and of their family members, friends, and their families, with the identity thefts and frauds instances relevant. And that's also used to the ground locations, and military police switching and forging names, and black and white themed, involved with KKK, Confederate flag themed families of military and stuff like that associated with the girls that weren't in my classes, that went to my grammar school. I never saw them around. They were in other classes, other teachers. And so they kept kids connected that were kept needing to hide life progressions, and increasingly, as I then needed identity thefts and fraud, sequence shifts, need to slander, make lies about other people. They're also kept with roles with remote uses of where and how a whole bunch of countries are manifest at job sites where there are unions and stuff that's juxtaposed with overt criminal enterprises and private ones, and relevant to where and how they have shared policing hundreds of nations on and off our campuses, and their family members here and there are shared, so they have to look out for each other. But that's just one of the ways, one of the reasons. In other words, once they're stuck criminally foreign influence with people, they're stuck, like at Central Connecticut State University. So they've been involved in New Britain, Connecticut. They've been involved with Wethersfield campuses with identity thefts and frauds instances, a method of them, but a whole bunch of methods of pretending other. So these are people who I can't forge. That's why the courts have been switching and forging names and confessing roles with falsified police reports with multiple police departments, and with switching officers' names and between departments. So people are going to say, what? No one will make sense, because it's overtly criminal not to make sense, because that's where they're doing it. They're exploiting where and how they've been using, quote, the right to lie, unquote, where they don't have the right to lie. There was even a guy who looked just like the Comey guy, involved with former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, involved with a whole bunch of people on and off New Britain Superior Court and Hartford courts, leading up to the World Trade Center attack and since, that were also involved on and off campuses with identity thefts, frauds, instances, falsified police reports, roles, slanders, roles switching names, and roles with confessions and uses of their confessions. And I didn't, even know it was all the names, and there's still more we need to get. And the courts, again, they switch names because with the sequence shifts, and they make time achievements too fast, too slow simultaneously, where and how they prevent writing, and where and how they have roles with wire crime methods and with mail crime methods simultaneously, with the falsified police reports methods and uses of them method roles. And there were also the people involved with the prisons tied to them and on and off the state prison offices that are also involved with uses of English teachers that I had, for example. Never personal conversations with, all exceptions, exception nature and demonstration of the same thing. They got themselves criminally involved with that, using it for racketeering. In other words, we have police forms that have been telling lies to my teachers about me, and they'll tell you that if you ask them correctly. Because people want privacy, but they also want to, pretend other. Sometimes then they want privacy after that because they want a sequence shift for that too. So this is also recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed roles with the, there are doctors with badges who are foreign and domestic, who have been on and off Hartford Hospital, other medical campuses, have been involved with the families that answer the phones for the police departments, involved with, or for Wethersfield Police Department, that are involved with predicate acts with the agency, other police forms, other departments, and with the town offices, and with other countries like Afghanistan and like Korea and like Italy and these are the people involved with identity theft, fraud instances. So our justice systems have roles with psychiatry and psychology there and here, but and with the prisons. So those prisons are kept needing to hide the same lies. So now they have their kids. And these are men and women. These are women that had men lie to them. I don't even know their names. Now they're stuck needing to hide the same lies with the men who needed to pretend like, I don't know WBJ. I never had a conversation in my life. It's only the closest the only statement he ever made to me was about the corner, about the relativity of the corner to the community center. and their roles with this. See, with the Justice Department racketeering with worse than war crimes, with medical juxtaposed, and with overt